Hey guys, so this is my third attempt to record this video for you guys. I did the first one and I got a phone call, did the second one, and it's way too long and it won't upload to Blogger. I can't upload it to YouTube because it's very long. So this is attempt number 3. I hope you enjoy and appreciate and learn some stuff. So without further ado, let's get started. What you're going to need is, of course, your garment, whatever you're mending. Whatever you're working on, just keep that in mind. You're going to need some needles. These are Dritz. This is an assorted pack. Needles come in all different types. I can write a whole blog post, and I probably will, on the different types of needles and what they're used for and things of that nature. These are just general use sharps needles. Sharps meaning that they're sharp. They cut through the material and form just a little hole. Now, if you were working with knits or something like that, you would want a knit needle made for, it's a ballpoint, it's got a rounded end, and it's made for going through knits. It doesn't cut a hole like sharps do. Sharps, general use, that's what we have today. You're going to need some scissors because you're going to need to be able to cut your thread tails and things, maybe even a patch or something like that. These are sewing shears. These are specifically for my fabric. There is a general rule in my house: if you see the leopard print, you are to not touch unless you are cutting fabric, and then you are to get my permission first. These are gingers, and they are very expensive, limited edition, cannot get them anymore, so I baby them. And then thread. This is Gutermann polyester sewing thread. This goes in my machine. I have a Husqvarna, so it's calibrated for the European-made threads like Gutermann and Mettler, things of that nature. So that's what I have on hand, but you can use Coats & Clark's, anything that you have available. So thread. So what you're going to do first, we're going to go over tying a knot. You're going to cut some thread. You're going to cut it longer than what you want because you want to make sure that you can double or triple it up. So I just cut it that length there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to cut this to get it to where it threads through the needle. You're going to do this, let me see if I can get this to show. You're going to cut it, the tips of the thread, at an angle, 45 degrees or so. I don't know if you can see if it'll focus there, but it's got a little angle. Then you're going to take your needle, sewing needle, and you're just going to thread through the ends of the eye. You can bring it down and match it up the way that I tie a knot, which they're not completely matched up here, but you get the idea. You grab the needle. Let me go over this here. Grab the needle between your thumb and your ring finger, or your middle finger, I mean. Then you take the ends of the thread and you bring it and you hold it out like this. You overlap the ends of the thread onto the needle so it hangs down in front. Wrap it around a couple of times. I usually do 2 to 3. The more times you wrap, the bigger your knot will be. And you pull it down, and you have your knot. And you just go in here and you trim your threads. First thing we're going to go over, and let me adjust my camera here so you can see me and see what I'm working on here. I apologize for my messy table. Venom has been playing on it and slobbering. Okay, here we have our piece of fabric. This is what we're going to just be working on here today. I hope that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, what we're going to do first is called a running stitch. You can use this for basting, for fixing seams, whip stitching a patch in place, but you're just going to go in and out of the material like this. The longer the stitch, it's more like basting than doing short little stitch length, and there you can see the difference. This, let me fix that there. This little bit here would be more like a basting stitch if you just wanted to hold something in place before going back and stitching it together, and this nice little section here where they're evenly spaced and together would be more like repairing a seam or sewing a patch or something on. You can also do what's called a whip stitch. A whip stitch, sorry about hitting the camera there. A whip stitch is where you go over the edge like so. You would whip it into place. If you had another piece of material, like a patch or something, you would whip it around, and that whips that like that. Now let's cut my tail off, my knot off here. Pull that through, retie my knot. Now we're going to do an overcast or blanket stitch. You would do this on the edge of like a fleece blanket, or to make sure something doesn't fray, because if you use cotton material, it's going to fray. Now I'm going to fold this in half just so there's a little extra. You'd start from the back, and you'd go in kind of near the edge, like so. My thread is knotting up, as you can tell. It wouldn't do that if I would have waxed it, but I didn't wax. They sell wax for hand sewing, but of course I don't have any. You're gonna whip it around like doing a whip stitch. So let me make sure you can see this here. Okay, you're gonna sew that around there. You got a little loop. You go in the opposite side of that loop and you pull down, and that's what it looks like right there. That's what that looks like. Now I'm going to adjust the camera so I can make sure that you guys can see what I'm doing, because it's not fair that we get this out of the angle. Okay, there we go. Now let's do this again for you. You go in on one side, you catch just a little bit right there at the edge, and you can see I pulled too hard, so my loop loose went all the way down. You go in, you can just pull that loop back up and keep going. You would just keep going along the whole edge of your material. You would want to make sure that these are like evenly spaced and you don't have your thread tails caught. And then you would just keep going along and finish that off. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is the way that I do a hand blind hem. Blind hems are commonly shown on, commonly appear in the bottom of dress slacks and skirts, dresses, things like that. It's a continuous piece of fabric, or a continuous piece of thread that is looped around, and that's why they come undone most often. I actually have a professional blind hemmer for my alterations, so I can just go ahead and do that. But on some of my more couture items, vintage dresses and things like that, I do the hand stitch. So here's how I do it. I go through, actually I'm going to cut this off real quick, knot this up. I go through this side of the material on the folded up piece. I'm going to pretend this is my hem, and this is folded up, and this is a pant leg. So I tuck that in there. I go through and I pick up just a tiny little bit right there, and I pull that through, and then I come down here and I grab just a tiny bit, like so, and then again, teeny bit. You just want to grab just a tiny bit of the fabric. You want to make sure you match the color of your thread to the color of your garment that you're fixing. Otherwise, it's going to be visible on the other side. So, and then again, a teeny tiny bit. There is other ways to do a blind hem. This is just the way that I do it. And it makes these little X's along. And then, of course, you wouldn't want it to catch down here, but you would have these little dots every so often. And that's why you want to make sure it matches as closely as possible to your garment, because it is going to be slightly visible. And this is just a quick fix over doing the whole hem that way. It gets to be kind of tedious to try to match that and sit there and catch just ever so tiny little amounts. And then the last thing we're going to do today is we're going to sew on some buttons. There are two types of buttons. There are buttons with shanks and buttons without shanks. Commonly, a button with shank is what you would find on like suit coats, jackets, knit garments have it. And what it looks like is let's see if we can get that to focus there. It's got this little piece that sticks out on the back that has the hole in it, and that's where you sew it on at. Okay? So what you would do is you would flip this over. We'd go through the back of your fabric where you would have your knot. You'd pull it through, and then you would just thread that through your needle, and then you would go in the other side of the garment and pull down. Now I will tell you, the more threads that you have on your needle, the stronger that your button is going to be held in place. So 4 threads on your needle goes through, it's like going through 4 times with a single piece of thread. So the more times you go through, the stronger it's going to be, the more it's going to be held in place. You go up again, hold that in place, through the other side, and you get the idea. You would want to make sure all your threads go through, and then now it's secured in place. You would tie your knot and it's secured in place. Now the other kind of button is a flat shirt button, and it's flat, it has no shank on the back, 4 holes. It can also have 2 holes, 6 holes. You can have as many holes in it as the button designer wants. I've seen them where you can make letters and things like that, but this is standard 4-hole button. Now, you'd put that on your shirt. You would go in the back side where you want it to be, like so. You would go through your holes. We're going to do it in an X pattern. So you would go slightly diagonal and make sure that the button was straight. You don't want to pull it all the way down. If you pull it all the way down, your shirt's not going to be able to go through the button, lay nicely behind the buttonhole. So you want to just leave it ever so slightly loose. And then you would go through, if I can find the hole here. Sometimes it helps to look at the back. And go through one more time. Keep it in place. And then you go through the other side. And then when you're done, you want to gently tug on it up. So you pull it up just ever so slightly. Pulls it nice and taut in the back. You're going to go in without going through the hole. And then what you're going to do is you're basically going to create a little shank on the back of this. And that's going to help bring that button up away from the garment so that you can fit your button behind it. And then you would just go, I left too small of a amount of thread, but you would go through the other side here and you would tie it off into a knot and cut your thread. And there you have your button. I hope this has been helpful for you guys. And that if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, leave it in a comment below. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And if you want to see anything else, let me know. All right, thanks. Have a good day. Bye.